Good morning to you all. I hope you have had a good day yesterday. It's Friday, and can you believe we're nearly 2 weeks down at being at home, which has gone really, really quick, hasn't it? I'm going to start by going through yesterday's answers. So, task one, what evidence can you find in the text that shows Poppy's gran is demanding? Well done to those of you who sent me your answers. I've looked through them and everyone has got lots of evidence. These are my answers. You may have all of them, you might have some of them, you might have more than me, um, but I'll just quickly go through these. So you could have take the key from around my way, from around my wrist, go to the cabinet. Now using only one hand, lift the um, cup, find the tweezers in the cabinet and take 2 lumps of sugar. Lock the cabinet, bring me back the key, put the sugar lumps in my tea. The sugar must be kept locked up. And I'm hoping that those of you who are good at SPAG should have noticed that most of these sentences are what we call in SPAG commands because they start with verbs. So go to the cabinet, put the sugar lumps in my tea. And then this last one here has got a modal verb must, which we've spoken about in class. We use modal verbs to show that we're being bossy, and we'll often use them in persuasive writing. So mark those and let me know how many you got. Obviously, you could have had as many as possible, really, for this type of question. So the more you had, the better. Next task. I wanted you to write down 6 synonyms for the word glistening. So the synonyms that I came up with were shining, sparkling, twinkling, glinting, glittering, and glimmering. And there's not really any right or wrong answer for this question. It would be down to your own reasons, really. So if I was in class with you, I'd ask you, well, why did you put the word there? Why did you put it there? So you could have ranked them in any order. But the main part is as long as you've got the synonyms and that you understand what synonym means, it's another word for a word. Task 3, find and copy 5 opinions from the text. Now, again, this is quite open-ended, so you should have realised that opinions need to have adjectives, and you could have gone through the text and found lots of opinions that Poppy had or lots of opinions that her gran had. So I've written down one opinion here, a smile that said she knew Poppy was watching her. Well, that's Poppy's opinion because she doesn't know that for a fact and she couldn't have proved that. And then task 4, again, very open-ended. Summarise the text so far in your own words, no more than 30 words. I've had a go at writing my own summary, and remember the reason for a summary is to really check that you understand what you've just read, but in a few words and not writing word for word. So my summary here says, a girl called Poppy is travelling on a train to visit her gran, and she is wearing a corduroy dress and has a heavy rucksack. She sees a strange lady who seems to disappear, and when she gets off the train, she takes a purse. So check your summary, check that it's to do with what we've read, and you've not made anything up that's not in the text. Okay, moving on to today's lesson, then Friday. So we'll carry on reading the text. Before we carry on reading, I'll just quickly recap so we know that this is about a girl called Poppy who's been on a train to go and visit her gran. We don't know what's happened to her mum, but we know she's staying with her gran, and her gran is very keen and very into using lots of different cloths, different fabrics. Her gran's very demanding. She likes her cups of tea. So let's carry on reading and see what the rest of the text says. So Gran finished off the last peach and drank the juice from the tin. Some say they made it with the web of the whistling spider. Others say they used silk threads from the Chinese devil worm, softened in the stomach of the skipping camel. But I say otherwise. The old woman narrowed her briny eyes and leaned towards Poppy. I say magic, she said, and picked her teeth with a needle. Poppy's neck was suddenly aware of the tiny hairs on the back of it. You can't expect me to believe that, Gran. Then how else do you explain it? Poppy thought for a moment and considered biting her nail absent-mindedly. Well, No one can ever really prove they've seen a ghost or what it looks like inside a witch's supply cupboard, so no one could ever prove the materials really ever were that special, could they? Gran smiled. You must be careful not to be too clever, my little button. Overthinking clogs the brain like soggy cereal clogs the sink. Poppy narrowed her eyes. Gran held out her cup. Make me another tea and fetch me a biscuit, would you, pet? Poppy put the kettle on the stove. Where did we leave off? Oh, that's right, Gran said, unpicking a few of the scales from a pair of beetle wings she was making. The fabric became even more famous. The town of Suds prospered and grew until something odd began to happen. The kettle whistled as it began to boil, and Poppy poured the hot water over the fragrant tea leaves. One by one, like the birds of summer, children began to vanish. Poppy put the kettle down and brought Grandma high tea. What do you mean? How did they vanish? When did this happen? Churchill the pig rested his snout on the edge of his basket, as if listening to the story too. I mean just what I say. Children began to vanish. One here, one there. They faded away. I remember I was 23 when Wilma Naubles disappeared. Wilma was a swimming champion. Every day before school she would swim up and down the river like a seal, until one morning something peculiar began to happen. It started with Wilma's eyes. Very slowly, little by little, their colour began to fade. Before she knew it, the colour from her hair began to drain away too. The last time Wilma climbed into the river, despite being 10 years old, she was as grey as an old woman. People watching from the shore said that she took a deep breath, sunk beneath the water, and dissolved like a blob of paint. Some said she was eaten by the old fish rumoured to live in the River Suds, but even I'm not superstitious enough to think that's likely. Poppy nodded politely. She didn't know if she believed her wily old Gran. She was 12 after all, and 12 is the age when one truly starts reasoning what is real and what is fabricated. I can see you don't believe me, but let me tell you this. Ever since, and ever so slowly, the children of Suds have been dwindling away. Where did they go? Poppy asked. When was the last time it happened? Gran looked at Poppy and answered only one of her questions. No one knows. Sugar, my button. 2 lumps. Poppy retrieved the sugar, heeding Grandma's instructions. And what's happened to the mills now? They're still there, said Gran, sipping her tea. Somewhere in the woods outside of town. Riddling woods. Neglected, ruined, and overgrown. Whether the fabric which floats down the river comes from the mills or not is anybody's guess. People in the village like to say they are haunted. Haunted? Haunted, said Gran, by the ghost of a washerwoman who crouches beside the river's edge, washing the stains from a grey cloth. That's not real, muttered Poppy, her chest swimming with unease. It might not be real, but it's a fact that people have seen her, said Gran wryly. Now, while your dad is away for the next few weeks and you're staying with me here in Suds, I want you to follow 4 simple rules. No one else seems to bother with them these days, but I'm being a bit old-fashioned sometimes, Poppy, and I like to stick to them. Poppy fetched her notepad from her backpack and wrote down what Grandma said. With each line she wrote, her fingers stiffened and her heart began to dance its familiar dance. Okay, so now it's starting to make a bit more sense to me reading this, and I hope it is you too, as to what, when we looked at the first lesson and the book cover, what this text might be about. So your last tasks of the week, task 1. I want you to have, some of you need a little bit more practice on this. I want you to have a go looking at these 3 phrases. I want you to tell me what these phrases suggest. And this time I haven't highlighted the words that I want you to look at, because I want you to think about what you've learnt this week and think about how are you going to start this answer. What words do you need to unlock? And what do those words suggest? Why is the writer use those words or phrases? So we've got overthinking clogs the brain like soggy cereal clogs the sink. Every day before school she would swim up and down the river like a seal and dissolve like a blob of paint. So what does each phrase suggest? Why is the writer use each of those phrases? Task 2, What is Poppy thinking when her gran says this? Complete a thought bubble in first person to show what she's thinking. So we to read that paragraph where her gran's describing that the children have vanished, and I want you to write a thought bubble. So imagine you are Poppy. What's she thinking at that point in the text when her gran is describing what's happened? And task 3, bit more creative. I want you to write your own blurb for this book based on what we've read so far. So remember, a blurb is what's on the back of all books that we read that tells the reader what the text is about. So have a go at those tasks. Get back to me if you're not sure what to do. Last lesson of the week. Well done to those of you who've done all of the lessons this week. You are working so hard. And submit your work to me later in the day. But have a great day, all of you. Take care. Bye bye.